there's optimal ways to do things, and there's ideal ways to do things suitable to those individual circumstances. Like the optimal way of doing things is like, all right, here's the study, here's the research, here's the scientific evidence. Like this is what we need to do. This is going to give you best results. But you know, in reality, it doesn't work like that. You know, we still need to have a look at what people are doing in their lives. We need to, you know, adjust these tools. So, you know, then we're looking at ideal. All right, what's going to be ideal for you right now? What are the ideal protocols that we can start adding in or taking out or whatever it might be? So my question is, when we're looking at, let's say fighters, right? I work at Tiger Muay Thai, I work with professional fighters. When we're looking at females that are competing and they have no input into when they fight, how can we look at giving them we're not going to be able to optimize their hormones, right? Unless we can say, hey, they're going to fight on this date because this is where it falls on their cycle.
Yeah.
How can we give them ideal protocols to be able to kind of manage that fight camp process? Let's say it's an 8-week fight camp. How can we give them protocols that are going to put them in a good position to be able to perform at their best?
Yeah. So there is an answer to this, and I almost don't want to give it because it's not something that I genuinely wouldn't recommend. But the reality is a lot of girls do it, and instead of acting like I don't have an answer for you, I kind of may just as well give it.
I know what your answer is anyway. But
and you know, you manipulate it with birth control.
Yeah.
A lot of girls do it for stage. Athletes do it because the birth control kind of mimics that first half of the cycle in terms of obviously having you know, sufficient amounts of estrogen. So yeah, you know, a lot of girls will manipulate that with birth control just for short periods of time. Now, there probably isn't really going to be a problem doing that. Anything you do for such short periods of time is probably going to be fine. And
what would you say a short period of time is?
Well, say, you know, the fight is 1 week into the second half of your cycle, you'd probably just need to take the birth control for long enough for it to kick in for you.
Okay.
Which is going to depend on if you're having the mini pill or a blend or some stuff which you would just need to decide on what one's best for you. So that's probably only going to be a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You know, you could do it the whole fight camp if you wanted to never have the slight disadvantage of the second half of your cycle. But if you're like, I'm very much prepared to kind of, you know, if the cycle isn't that doesn't make massive changes for you and you kind of don't want to do that, doesn't line up with your values, then you know, you just do your fight camp and you just change the training stimulus up a little bit. We can chat about how to do that in the second half of the cycle.
Maybe you just do a deload.
Yeah, or you just well, let's get to that in 1 second. And then you would just kind of like maybe use the birth control for 2 weeks leading up to the fight, so that you are technically in the state of the first half of your cycle when actually you were technically in theory in the second half of your cycle. So
Gotcha.
Using it for a short period of time. I know a lot of girls that do that. And the slight kind of thing to take into account there is nothing healthy about getting on stage as a bikini girl or getting into a cage and fighting. So it's like in the grand scheme of what you're doing to your body, is taking birth control for 2 weeks going to be a problem?
Yeah, that's what I mean, like optimal versus ideal,
Yeah.
right? Like we want to be looking at health, but you know, health and performance don't necessarily go hand in hand.
No.
So I'm thinking like, let's look at health all year round, and then, all right, cool. Now we've signed a fight contract. We've got 8 weeks for this fight. All right, now we're training for performance,
there's nothing
right?
healthy about that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You've laid the foundation and the prerequisites of health to be able to do that.
Exactly.
And that is something the bodybuilding world does so well, and the fight world needs to learn.
Yeah,
you know, most fighters don't reverse diet. They're not tracking any health metrics. They often gain a lot of body fat, and every time they do a fight camp, it becomes harder for them to diet next time because of this metabolic adaptation thing. Whereas bodybuilders get better every show for the most part because they have a structured off-season or improvement season, as some like to call it, and that's partly due to the reverse dieting calories up, not gaining body fat, all of that stuff, which is so important. So
I'm building that out of Tiger, bro. About that.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm sure you are. So, and that's really valuable. You know, every time you train for a fight, it should become not easier. Easier isn't the right word, but the weight cut should not get harder, maybe even easier, and you should be better.
You become more refined in the process.
Exactly. You know, metabolism is in a better place, not a worse place, etc., etc. Again, you look at good men's physique guys or good bikini girls, which, you know, is bodybuilding. Most people, when they think of bodybuilding, think of bodybuilding category, but men's physique guys and bikini girls are still bodybuilders. You know, they maybe do 1 or 2 shows a year, and every year they're bigger and they're leaner. They're maybe not always healthier if they are running drugs, which is a big if, but they are bigger and leaner. They are better for their sport every year because they have that amazing structure and consistency in the off season, which, as you correctly said, is where you lay the prerequisites and the foundation of health and optimizing things, because when it is time to drop the hammer, 8-week fight camp or 12-week contest prep, there's nothing healthy about that. So your start point dictates your end point. But yeah, bringing it back to birth control, that is one thing that obviously some females, can consider if they want to. If not, you just kind of have to roll with it, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's got to weigh everything up and then make the most educated decision that you can.
Exactly. If there's a huge variance for you between your aggression and your coordination and your skill, and you really want to make it as a fighter, I think you'd be silly to take a fight in your second half of your cycle in your luteal phase. So try it. Go on birth control for 2. I don't even want to say try it. Consider trying going on birth control for 2 weeks when in theory you would be in your luteal phase the second half of your cycle, and see if it mimics the first half and see if you feel good. And if it does, don't ever do anything for the first time leading up to a fight. That's never a good idea.
That was exactly my point.
Do it as a trial run.
Yeah.
And if you're like, oh wow, actually, I feel much better on these 2 weeks on birth control than when I'm normally in my luteal phase, then cool, that's a strategy for you. But again, some girls it really triggers anxiety and mood swings, and it might not. So definitely do a trial run, and know that isn't going to work for everyone, but it is an idea. But again, say you're fighting 5-minute rounds, that's very cardiovascular. Obviously other energy systems are used within that, but 5-minute rounds is a long time to fight. And we have a slightly better, aerobic capacity in that second half of the cycle. So you might be a little bit not as strong, a little bit less aggressive, a little bit less powerful maybe, but your cardio is probably going to actually be a little bit better in the second half of the cycle. So maybe you're someone that is an absolute power puncher, and you're aggressive anyway and you feel great, but your cardio is a bit of a problem. You might actually be a good thing for you to fight in that second half of the cycle.
It depends on what your game plan is, right?
Exactly.
Like if you want to push the pace, take a little bit of power off and push the pace and work a little bit more speed, that could work out well for you.
And if it's noticeable for you. Some people might do, let's equate just a 25-minute run on a treadmill at 12%, for example. You might do that in your first half of your cycle and your second half and not notice a difference. In which case, then that point, isn't relevant for you. You might notice a big difference. But this is where it comes back to kind of the whole point of this, podcast is, I'm sorry about that, I don't know who that is. The whole point of this podcast is it comes back to, being your own scientist, right? You've got to figure this stuff out for yourself. And then having some sort of benchmark in your training, like knowing your 6-rep max back squat, for example, knowing your 12-minute Cooper time, like knowing a few of these numbers is really, really important, because then you can compare in phase 1 to phase 2, and you can kind of then start to make these obviously educated decisions based on what is best for you.
Awesome, man.